Huddle with paperplusoffice.co.nz, your local office supplies specialist, now open for business.
NewstalkZB is 22 to 6, the Huddle this evening. Josie Pagani and Cameron Slater, and a very good evening to you both.
Hello.
Good evening.
Well, really only one topic, isn't there, guys, today? Peter Dunn, let's start with a quick comment from each of you. Josie, do you actually think he's done anything wrong?
Well, the problem is he's done two things wrong. He hasn't complied with the directive from the Prime Minister to hand over the emails and cooperate with the inquiry. That was the first mistake, and he's paid for that one by being fired as a minister. But the big mistake he's made, apart from getting caught, that's rule number one: when you leak, you don't get caught. And the shock is after 30 years in Parliament that he doesn't know how to leak properly. You never use your ministerial email for a start. But the big mistake he's made is that it appears he may have misled Parliament, and if it turns out that he has, that's what makes this different to other leaks. Because if he was in that select committee and misled that committee, that's in Parliament, yes, you can spin the media, you can obfuscate, you can try and make things sound fuzzy, but in Parliament, you tell the truth.
That's a very complicated. That's
a
complicated one. I'll get to you in a moment, Cameron, because I was reading some legal advice on that this afternoon, and they're saying, well, actually, it wasn't the committee to be asking those questions in front of. There is an argument that it was none of the business of the Expenditure and Finance Committee read the leaked emails, and so there is a very good argument that he may not have misled Parliament, and the Privileges Committee may come to nothing.
I read that. Yeah, that was Andrew Geddes.
Andrew Geddes.
And it's an interesting point, but I do think it's sort of spinning on the head of a pin, really, that he was in that select committee and he was asked, that's the question, was he asked under oath? But he was in the sanctity of Parliament, if you like. That committee was sitting, and if it seems that he has misled that committee, I think even if it's not directly the business of that committee, that will matter, and that's why we're still talking about it.
Because Cameron Slater, of course, the person who will make the decision on the privileges, which seems to be the big things outstanding at this point, is the Speaker.
Well, that's right. I mean, it's a bit rich to be talking about the sanctity of Parliament when you've got Winston Peters, the guy who's laying the complaint, and David Shearer toadying along behind him. It's almost like David Shearer's policies for everything is what he said, and just carrying on like that. But remember, this is Winston Peters who lied to the Privileges Committee directly that he never received a donation from Owen Glenn. It's very hard to believe Winston on anything. Yes, he's got some good information on Peter Dunn and the content of, well, presumably...
Well, I think, actually, I've just got to correct you on that, Cameron. I mean, Winston would argue, no, he did not receive it directly. It was David Henry who received that money.
I mean, it was slightly different in that there were two different versions of that story.
That's right.
Whereas here is, you called for Winston's resignation then. So presumably, if Peter Dunn has been found to mislead Parliament, then you would call for Peter Dunn's resignation just like you called for Winston.
Owen Glenn stood there and said, well, I actually spoke to Winston Peters and he handed over the phone to Brian Henry. So he refuted everything that Winston Peters said at the time. But, I mean, this is about Peter Dunn. Now, if we're going to talk about resignations, and why is Leanne Dalziel still sitting there in Parliament? She did a similar thing, in fact, probably far worse, in that she actually managed to get a refugee deported from the country with her leak.
Well, she misled the media. She didn't mislead the House, Parliament. And that's the key thing, Cam, whether, we can argue about it as much as we want.
Well, Winston got off scot-free with the help of his Labour Party pals.
No.
You can keep talking about the past, but if you focus on Peter Dunn right now, if it is proven that he's misled the House, that is serious, because the only place where we can get the truth out of politicians is in Parliament.
No, well, we still don't. But, I mean, the worst thing about Peter Dunn really is he should feel most ashamed about is that people can't really even believe that with his power and status he couldn't get his leg over. I mean, that's what it seems.
Trust you to bring it down to this level.
Enough, Cameron.
That's what everyone's talking about, isn't it? Really?
Oh, we don't know. Look, no, let's just, we've got to be clear and fair here. The thing is, all we know is that there seems to be some sort of besottedness, perhaps would be the strongest word you could say, as Winston Peters put it, no fool like an old fool. Cameron, let me finish. Well. Everybody has had their head turned at some point, and that really doesn't mean very much
I think it's so shocking. It's almost like, because it's Peter Dunn, Mr. Sensible, he's made an art of being boring and predictable and safe, and it's like finding out he's got a tattoo tattoo and sings in a hardcore punk band at the weekend. You know? That's what's so shocking about it.
The other thing that really surprises me is that people will use email, and especially a work email, and especially a parliamentary email, to put anything that they don't want exposed to the cold light of day.
That's what I mean. It's like the shock is that he got, after 30 years, he doesn't know how to do this properly.
Yeah, but the thing, he should have done it like Chris Carter and left notes on people's seats in the press gallery.
Or Murray McCulley, who used his Gmail account or something, didn't he? I mean, he didn't use a ministerial address.
I think Peter Dunne's being a little cute too, saying he's not going to release the emails. The fact is that he wouldn't have had access to this unless he was a minister. He's dealing with items of interest as a minister. That opens up those emails, I believe, to the Official Information Act, and there's no way he's going to be able to keep them out of the public domain. And the reality is it's just saving himself and possibly Andrea Vance a little bit of embarrassment. He should have just flicked them out and got it over and done with.
Well, he's stuck, isn't he? Because either he's got to clear his name, in which case he's got to reveal those emails, or he doesn't reveal those emails because of some weird point of principle which doesn't really carry through because he's already released half of them.
Absolutely. How can you have a point of principle, I don't want to release my emails, but here's a bit of them anyway?
Here's some of them, yes, which just doesn't stack up, does it? But the real question is, who leaked to Winston?
I would love to know the answer to that, and I've been racking my brain, Cameron.
That's interesting on that, because Winston stood in the Parliament, slagged off David Henry, said that the report was going to be a whitewash, it was going to be all these sorts of things. Now, it was nothing that Winston claimed other than Peter Dunne was going to get the sack.
But
Peter Dunne got the sack because the Prime Minister demanded he showed the emails. Peter Dunne said, I'm not going to.
So it was a breach of trust.
This.
And you have to ask who stands to gain from leaking to Winston. That's what I've been trying to get my head around.
Jerry. I think it's Jerry Brownlee in his office.
I know Michelle Bogue on Q&A, didn't she, Susan?
Yeah, she did.
She tried to suggest it was Andrea Vance, but I can't see what Andrea Vance would have to gain.
She wouldn't. She's a journalist.
Overseas to get away.
I actually think the only...
No, Cameron, you've got to be fair again. Andrea is on a pre-arranged...
Standing pre-arranged...
Thank you.
Yes, I saw that.
But it is... fascinating to think that Andrea Vance has them, obviously, and Dunn has them, and it's not in either of their interest to leak them.
No, and I don't think, and it wouldn't
Winston
be the national. It's not John Key in the national government, or it could be somebody in the government, but it's not John Key because, if you notice, Winston was very careful to keep slagging off John Key and saying he's not doing a good enough job. So it can't be them. So then you have to think, well, maybe is it someone in United Future who thinks that this is a done and dusted party? I need a job after the election. I've got to curry favour with Winston Peters.
Goodness only knows. We'll leave it there. Quick break. Josie Pagani, Cameron Slater back in just a moment. It's 5:45.
Susan Wood Drive. With the new ANZ, the bank that gives you more.
5:45, the Huddle this evening, Josie Pagani and Cameron Slater. Cameron, as we know, Peter Dunne's taken this week off. One assumes he's regrouping and spending some time talking to his wife.
I don't know. She probably isn't quite relieved he's gone overseas. It's not like she'd probably want him around at the moment. No,
he's around, isn't he? Or has he disappeared somewhere? I thought Peter Dunne...
overseas, isn't he?
Oh, no, I thought Andrea Vance had gone overseas.
No, Peter Dunne has too.
Where's he gone?
Anyway, moving right along.
But was it tactically, do we think it's a good move to... Because he is going to have to front the media again at some point. Winston's going to want to have another go. Labour's got the complaint. And wouldn't it have been better to actually front up to it this week?
Well, I've always been of the opinion that when you're in deep trouble, the best thing to do is fess up with everything, dump it all out there so that the bones get picked over neatly and quickly, and beg the forgiveness of everyone and then disappear.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, Cam, because by disappearing, he thinks this is going to go away.
No,
it isn't. And that's the problem, is that he's just going to be a target for the next 18 months. Every time he stands up in Parliament to say something, every time he appears, it's just going to be unbearable. And it's going to drive John Key absolutely nuts, because every time he tries to put out a good news story, there'll be some link back to Peter Dunne. I mean, and even .com, that's the other thing. This is yet another ripple from the .com debacle, isn't it?
Well, I mean, we'll hear the end of that in August when he gets on a plane to go and visit his lawyers in the United States.
You see, what else has happened with these United Party members? I mean, if they did manage to get the 500 financial members signed up,
have today.
They'll be resigning, though, won't they?
You would wonder if that party does have any sort of future at this point. Josie, do you think Peter should go? Mike Williams yesterday was saying, look, he should go, or it's death by 1,000 cuts. Should he just resign from Parliament, take his gold-plated pension and go and play golf, or should he hang around?
It's a sad and I don't know, slightly pathetic demise, isn't it? And I feel bad about that. I mean, only a few weeks ago, Susan, on Q&A, we were talking about Peter Dunn and saying, is it right that he has so much power?
20 plus bills he's backed the government on, one vote, yeah.
That's right, and yet a few weeks later, here he is.
It's a little bit sanctimonious of Mike Williams to be calling for resignations given his history in conspiracy theories and H-fees and all the rest of it.
But Cameron, let me ask you the question then. Cameron, do you think that Peter should just hang in, or should he go?
Look, MPs leak stuff all the time. He's got caught.
Yeah,
he's made himself to look like a goose. It's not a hanging offence. It wasn't for Leanne Dalziel. Why should it be for Peter Dunn?
But he'll undermine the government, Cam. You know how it works. Every time
his throat needs cutting. But that's just the way of it.
And wouldn't a by-election be interesting?
Well, no, it won't be interesting at all because it's a solid blue seat all day long. And so Labor hasn't got a show. They got rid of Charles Chauvel anyway.
Well, hold on a minute. You've got Katrina Shanks. Now, she's already in Parliament, so it's going to be very
But the by-election, the by-election is not the point. The point is actually the 2014 general election because, just assume National takes the seat if Peter Dunn disappears. The vagaries of MMP, proportionality, they need United Future. They need ACT.
Good point you raised there, Susan, because if National had won the seat, Labor would have had an extra list MP and National would have had one less list MP and no Peter Dunn. So having Peter Dunn win that seat enabled Labor to have one less seat and National to govern. That is true in terms of the vagaries of MMP, but the vagaries of MMP also preclude the silliness of people talking about snap elections. It's very difficult to call a snap election.
And there is no reason to call one right now, is there?
No reason to call
Very
one
good.
to too many votes. So.
Thank you for that. Cameron Slater, Josie Pagani. Sport next with Murray Decker. It's 9 to 6.